Ivory Coast is represented. Burkina Faso. Oh, Accra. The Gambia. Okay, so we have 79 participants, few more minutes, and then we'll be good to go. Lagos is in the house. Welcome, Morgan. Welcome to Boubacar from the Gambia, from Chad. Ousmane, bienvenue. Ousmane Ibrahim. Welcome, Manal from Egypt. So today, in today's webinar, we are going to walk you through how to designate a voter. We are going to present to you the process, how it works, how it is secured, and how you can designate a voter. So before we start, let me just give you some few house rules. So in today's webinar, we are discussing only about the ongoing election, the ongoing AFRINIC election. And today we are focusing on the process to get your voters designated. So in today's webinar, I will be here with my colleague Mukom. Someone will be the main presenter, and I will be somehow moderating and answering some of your questions. So talking about questions, if you have questions, feel free to type them into the Q&A section of Zoom at the bottom of your screen. If you have any comment or suggestion, please leave them in the chat. So the chat for your comments and suggestions, and your questions in the Q&A session. So I already have like one attendee, Mr. John Muraguri, who is having a hand. Please, if you have anything, is that a question, please type in the Q&A. If it's a suggestion, please just type in the chat. Now, let me welcome Mukom Tamon, who is a member of the ECOM, the election committee for this election, and he will be presenting. Mukom, hello.
Hello, Stephen.
Yeah. So how are you today?
I am doing great, and I'm excited to be here with you and with the rest of the community.
Okay, yeah. So talking about community, we have 83 of them in this session, 84 of them in this session, and we are more than also excited to listen to you. So if you're ready, the floor is now yours.
Thank you. Now, the 23rd of June of this year would probably go down as one of the darkest days in the history of AFRINIC. It really should not have been, because that was the day when we had a glimmer of hope that this company, the community, was going to set AFRINIC back on the path to governance normalcy. But that did not happen. Instead, we all watched on live stream. This is what we saw on live stream. We watched on live stream as about 6 or 7 people showed up with more than almost 1,000 powers of attorney documents, one of which we know for a fact was forged, in a blatant and audacious attempt to subvert the will of the community. And for those of you who watched online, I'm pretty sure this tore your hearts out. And trust me, in the office, it wasn't much better. In over a decade of being at AFRINIC, this was the first time I came close to seeing a riot at the office. But thanks to some cool heads and thanks to the vigilance of some of our colleagues, the travesty that was taking place was interrupted and then the elections were annulled. But we still need to have an election because there's no way we get out of this quagmire without an election. So thankfully, with the acceptance of the receiver and the rest of the NOMCOM, we agreed that one of the things that needed to happen for this election to be credible was that it had to be 100% online through direct voting. There'll be no proxies, there'll be no powers of attorney. But we still have a problem. Every member is supposed to have one vote. And since this election is going to happen online, in our databases, we have at least, for each member, we have at least 3 different contacts. So the problem for us is, which one of these 3 or more contacts, more for some organizations, are we going to choose to be the person who bears the ballot for each organization? That is not something for AFRINIC staff to be able to determine. Right? That is something, that's a decision that we must leave to the competent people in the member organizations. But of course, AFRINIC and the ECOM, we need to facilitate the procedure to make sure that every organization can designate one voter. And that is how we came up with the voter designation process. So the objective of this process is to take in the 10,000 plus or more contacts that we have on our database that belong to about 2,500 members. We take in all the court orders that limit who can take part in this election or not. We take in the different types of members based on whether they can vote or not, and as well as their status. By putting them through this process, we intend to have one outcome. For each organization, we'll have one and only one designated voter that is vouched for by the registered contacts that we have on our database. That is the result, that's the desired outcome of this process. Now, let me talk a bit about the different people or groups of people that are required to make this work. Now, there are 3 main categories of actors. The first one is the registered contacts. These are people that are already on our mailing list, not on our mailing list, on our database, that is MyAfrinic. These are the billing contacts, these are the technical contacts, these are the administrative contacts. They are people we trust. We trust them because we've had an ongoing relationship with them, either because they're the ones responsible for paying bills to AFRINIC every year, or they're the ones that have the usernames and passwords to the MyAfrinic accounts that stores all of your precious IPv4 resources. So these are the people we trust. These are the people on our mailing list. We call them the registered contacts. However, the other entity that is required to make this process work is what we call a nominating executive. This is someone, typically a CEO or CTO, an executive with the power to delegate the right to vote on behalf of the company, either to themselves or to someone else. They typically are the boss to the registered contacts. That is the second person that is required to make this process work. And the last one is a designated voter. That is the person who is going to vote on behalf of the company. Now, the trust architecture of this process is as follows. We trust the registered contacts, but we do not by default trust anyone who is not a registered contact. So at the end of this procedure, the people that we don't trust get to be vouched for by the people that we trust so that we can end up with one designated contact. So In other words, the people that we trust are going to extend the trust that we already have to them to two of those individuals, the nominating executive and the designated voter. Now, let us talk about roles and responsibilities, starting with the roles and responsibilities of the registered contacts. Remember, these are the people. If you are here, you most likely are here because you received an invitation to come join. If you are here, you must also have been receiving a series of emails explaining this procedure and what you do through all of last week. And the main roles and responsibilities of this group of people are, first of all, they're the ones receiving the emails, the emails about the procedure. Starting last Monday, they received an email saying, we're going to run an election. Then they receive another email explaining in brief this process that I'm going through with you. And then there was a third email that explained one of the instruments, which is called the Delegation of Voter Authority, how to fill it. And last Thursday, they received a link where the designated voter was supposed to go register their nomination. So these are the roles and responsibilities that we expect for the registered contacts. They receive communications from us. They will be the ones who educate their executive, the CEO or CTO, about the need to appoint a voter to vote in these elections. And then, of course, because they're the ones that we trust, whenever a designation has been received for a voter, they will be the ones that will count upon to validate that this nomination is legitimate or illegitimate. Now, let's look at the other two roles, the nominating executive and the designated voter. Now, the role of the nominating executive, they're the ones who authorize someone to vote on behalf of the company. Of course, they could nominate themselves as a designated voter, or they could nominate someone else. There is no expectation that the designated voter chosen here be one of our registered contacts. But also, whenever we receive a nomination, we will always mirror it back to them to confirm. Because remember, the trust architecture here is that if you are not a registered contact, we don't trust any information about an organization unless it is vouched for by a registered contact. So, what about the designated voter? The designated voter, they will be the ones who, upon receiving and the authority to vote on behalf of the company by the nominating executive, they'll go register the nomination. And once we validate them that they're legitimate and they've been vouched for by the registered contacts of their organization, they get to receive the ballot and then vote in this election. So the mantra here is, if you're a registered contact, we trust you. Now you tell us whom we can trust. So it works like this. Because we trust you, we're going to ask you, do you know this nominating executive? Do you know this designated voter? And if we receive an overwhelming yes, 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 we do, as has been happening for 106 plus members over the last 3 days, then what it means is that we've extended the web of trust. We trust that executive, we trust that designated voter because you, who belongs to that same company, who's a registered contact with that same company that we trust, say so. Now, let's quickly talk about, what you need in order to start this whole process. There are two main things that you need to start the process. And when I say you, I mean you on behalf of your organization. You need something we call a delegation of voter authority, and then you need a link to an online form. And if you're a registered voter who's eligible to vote, you already received this information in a series of emails last week. Let's talk about the first one, the delegation of voter authority. This is the instrument by which the executive chooses who is going to vote on behalf of the organization, right? We have provided a template for this, what this letter should look like. It's on our website in several formats. All you need to do is, if you're a registered contact, you are the one who's going to get a copy of this, go speak to the executive and say, we need to fill this in order to designate a voter. And once you fill in all of the information, you have it on the company letterhead. It is signed, stamped, treat it as an official document. Then you're ready, pretty much ready to vote in the elections. Not ready. You're not ready to vote yet, but you are one step closer to getting ready to vote. Now note, it is very important because over the last 1 week, we've received lots of questions and comments. We do not need this letter to be notarized. We do not need it to be apostilled. We don't need any kind of legal attestation or any complex paperwork. It is one document with very specific fields. We need you to fill it on your company letterhead, sign it, then stamp it, then get a scanned copy, and that is all that is required. Now, that scanned copy of this document that is signed by the nominating executive on the letterhead of the company is what the designated voter who is mentioned in this document is going to take and head to this form. Now, if you notice that from the very first thing, you cannot even start if you don't have that letter. So that letter is what saying, okay, I have been authorized by my company to be the designated voter. So if you don't upload it here, you can't get past the screen. Then, of course, on this form, you will select the organizational identifier, what we call the org handle for your company from one of the drop downs. And then you simply fill in information about the company, about yourself, about a nominating executive, and 3 registered contacts. Now, we've received a couple of questions. Why do I need to fill this? Why do I need to fill the registered contacts? Don't you already know that? Yes, we do. But also, if you are not a registered contact, the only way you know about this form or this process is that you spoke to the registered contact. So that is information that everyone who is a legitimate designated voter would know. But think about it. If you're a malicious actor, what actually is going to go into that field? And what does it mean for us? That's food for thought. Now, it is very important, and this is for the first set of people who've been filling this over the last 3-4 days. It's very important that this form be filled by the designated voter, the person that is going to end up receiving the ballot to vote. This is the person that is explicitly mentioned in that designation of voter authority document that was signed by a nominating executive. And yes, it could be a self-nomination. And yes, it could be one of the registered contacts, but we make no such assumption. It is also important that once filling this form, you use the exact same information that was filled in the designation of voter authority. So the order of your names, the name of the company, the email address, because that's one of the checks that AFRINIC staff are going to do to try and make sure that this is a legitimate document. And it's very important to understand that even though you start filling this form on the website, you must complete it from your email address. First part of the form, you fill it online. And then the last part, it sends all of the information you filled to your email inbox. You must go to your email inbox and say, I've read this. This is what I want to submit. So that is the very first way that we know that, we are speaking to a legitimate person and not some spam bot. Now, let's talk about the how does the process actually work. So the very first thing which we've already started doing is we guide the registered contacts. This has been going on. Over the last 1 week, we've sent more than, I would say, 20,000 emails to about 5,000 contacts, educating you on the need for an election, the timeline, and the step-by-step that you need to fill that designation of voter authority. And then ultimately last Thursday, you had access to the form. So that is the guidance that we've provided only to registered contacts who are eligible to vote. Now, one of the questions that we've received is, I haven't received this email. If you haven't received this email, one of 2 things, it's one of 2 reasons. Your organization is not eligible to vote because of a court order that bars it, or you're not in good financial standing, at least for 2025. In that case, you would also have received a separate email telling you about that, how you can remedy that situation. Because if it's just about, you not being in good standing with 2025, you can remedy that situation and you'll still be eligible to vote. Now, the purpose of this guidance, this series of emails that we've sent, so far, it is 4 emails. And if as at yesterday, your organization had still not submitted a designated voter, you would have received 1 reminder, and the 3 more reminders that will come this week, unless of course you submitted the designated voter. Now, if you followed the instructions in those emails, you will understand the timelines. You understand where to get the designation of voter authority document template. You understand exactly how to fill it, the description of the fields, and exactly how to fill it. And we expect you to go have a conversation with your CEO or CTO, the most immediate executive that is responsible for, that manages you. In that meeting, you need to educate him about the importance of designating a voter for the AFRINIC elections. Of course, that designated voter, he could be the one, it could be one of you, the registered contacts, or it could be anyone within the company that they chose. It's important. Someone within the company that they chose. Now, upon filling that form, signing it, the designated voter is going to come to the online form and then fill in the information to register the nomination. And that's when we receive it. Now, when we receive this form, the very first thing we do is that from our trusted database, we inform all of the people that are registered contacts, people we inherently trust in your organization, to say, hey, this is to inform you that a nomination for voter has been received on behalf of your company. Please, this is the content of the nomination. It states the name of the company, the details of the nominating executive, their job role, their full name, the full name of the designated voter, their ID card. And then we ask the trusted contacts, please, can you just go through this? Is there anything here that looks fishy to you? And we expect them to respond. The ideal case is everyone says, yes, I know this guy. In fact, for maybe 98% of the 107 plus members that have already started going through this, that was, yes, I know this person. Yes, I know this person. There's nothing suspicious here. That's fine. Now, in that meantime, there are also some validations that we do. So our staff at AFRINIC are going to look at the designation of voter authority. They make sure that the information that is in that document matches what was filled in the form, because that's important. The names, the email addresses. We make checks like the email addresses of the nominating executive and the designated voter. Do they match the email addresses that is associated with the company and the registered contacts whom we trust? And if we sense anything's amiss, our staff are going to write the registered contacts and ask for clarifications. And sometimes it might be, please, you did not fill the form correctly, please complete it, and etc., etc. Now, once we go back and forth and we are satisfied that the nomination is legitimate, it means that we're going to accept it. When we accept it, the very first thing we do is that we're going to publish it on the voters list on the website. Which means on the website, at some point in the future, when this procedure ends, you're going to have a page that lists every company. And for that company, we'll state who is a designated voter, just their name, no email, no phone number. But we will also state who is it that designated them. That's the name of the nominating executive. That way, we are providing an opportunity for the community to look at that list, and if there's something suspicious, they will alert us. Because this is one of the painful lessons that we learned from the last fiasco. Right? So The objective for all of this procedure is that we'll have designated voters that we trust because we trust them because the registered contacts have said yes. And then secondly, we'll publish them on the website and the whole community can look at it. We know for a fact that there might be situations where there are no responses or there's some kind of compromise. But here we depend a lot on the power of community to say, yeah, but I know this company. This is not their CEO. These people don't work there anymore. So that is what we are counting on from our community to help us look at this list publicly. And then, of course, after that period for publicizing the voters list is over, the designated voters will now be registered on the e-voting platform. There, the very first thing is going to capture their biometrics and unique ID so that they can receive their ballots and then just wait to vote. Of course, while they're waiting, we'll send them a couple of emails about whatever is going on, countdowns, maybe webinars to come talk to the board nominees, etc., etc. Now, some of the validation checks that our staff will go through are, we want to check that the designation of voter authority is fully filled. We want to check that it is indeed signed by an executive. We want to check that the names of the designated voter matches what is on their government ID that they provided to us. And then we want to check that all the information that's been provided on the online form matches what is in the letter of authority that is signed and stamped. And then also things like the email domains. Now, it is going to involve some back and forth. But the only reason we are doing this is that before we give some person the right to vote on behalf of your company, we want to make sure that this person is not a stranger to you. And the way this works is that we trust you. Now you tell us who to trust. Now, the registered contacts are going to respond and say, yes, we know this executive. He's indeed our CTO or our CEO. That is good. They're going to say, we know this designated voter because he's one of our colleagues or he's our legal officer. We know him. That is good. That is good information that tells us, okay, the registered contacts of this organization, whom we trust, don't see anything wrong with this. So the only things that we might have to do is just make sure that in terms of documentation, for the purpose of auditability, all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted. So far, what's the status? How far have we come? Since we opened this last Monday, there are 1,740 eligible members as at last Monday. As at yesterday, 105 members have submitted the designation of voter, the designated voters, the nominations. But we still have 1,635 who are pending. So our call is, please understand, if you've not done this, the most important thing you can do is please nominate someone to vote on behalf of your organization. What we are doing on our side is, if you've not done that, tomorrow you're going to receive another email, a reminder, and then again on Friday. And if after 7 attempts to contact you by email, we do not succeed, what is going to happen is that AFRINIC staff are going to start calling you. We're going to start calling you on the phone to make sure that you get the notice and you go designated voter. So the motto here is that we trust you, our registered contacts. Now you tell us whom to trust. So I'll take questions and comments and whatever. So
thank you very much, Mukom, for the presentation. It was quite insightful and interesting. And our participants here should understand that our aim here is to have a secure election. For this to happen, part of it is making sure that we capture the right voters for each organizations. And the process is very straightforward as Mukom presented, but in the background, there are many checks that we are going to do. And the first checks are happening when you submit your entry on the form that we've provided. The link is shared with you in your email. And when it gets to us, we do the proper verifications and we make sure that we get the approval of such nominations from both the register contacts and the nominating executive. When we have this, we are going to share with the community, mirror back to the community to avoid all the discrepancies we had previously. So we want to make sure that your vote is protected. Your vote is protected, and later on after we've validated you and we know, Mukom is going to vote for TT. We are now going to send you to our collaborator for this, our sponsor, our vendor, the e-voting vendor for biometric verification. So we are going to assess to make sure that, oh, indeed, this is Mukom voting. And for this to happen, we are going to capture your ID and then verify that the face that you are showing is exactly what is there, and also make sure that the ID that you've submitted to us is an authentic ID. So we want to avoid any sort of fraud and make sure that the election is fair, clean, transparent. And for everything that we have here, we are keeping records. So in a later stage, if there is need for investigation, everything is available. So a couple of questions already were taken and answered. I don't mind if you still want to pick some of them and
Okay.
maybe elaborate more on them.
Okay, so the first question is, I see a question from, let's start with the one from Yvonne. Must all registered contacts validate? What about where some of the registered contacts are no longer employees of the organization? That's an important question. No, we do need at least 2 or 3, right? 2 or 3 validating, that's enough for us. So not all registered contacts need to validate, because you understand that, people move companies, and sometimes the WIS data in your MyAfriNIC is not always up to date. But we do need at least 2 of the registered contacts to say this is okay. Now, the question is, what if that information is out of date? Please, the one thing you can do is that you can always log onto MyAfriNIC and update your information, so that at least we just can't go on the fly and pick some information and try. So maybe say on LinkedIn, or we are not going to do that, to go on LinkedIn and say pick your time, try to contact you, right? But the thing we can do is that if you already put that trusted information in MyAfriNIC, we know it's trusted simply because in order to have put it in MyAfriNIC, someone who is trusted with the username and password had to have put it there. So that's one thing you can do. So can another question from Matthew Chigwende? Can the nominating executive be any other C-level, like the CFO? So I like that response from Stephen, so long as they have the authority, because on that document, they have to say, I have the authority to do this. So we are not experts in the delegation of authority process in your company. Where that exists, in fact, last week we had a situation where one of the companies that was eligible to vote came back and said, in our organization, terms like CEO, CTO do not exist. But they say here is the official delegation of authority policy in our company. We say, fine, stick to the delegation of authority procedure in your company. You'll be fine. So I see a question here from Mark Elkins. After sending the designated voter an ID to AFRINIC, you have sent the acknowledgement for this, asking to validate the designated voter, but no link to validate the contents. Mark, I don't know what you mean by a link to validate the contents. The email that you will receive with the ticket number has the contents of the nomination in it, as well as a link to the ID. So there is no validation is you responding saying this is okay, this is not okay. Because everything that you need to validate is already in the email that you receive from. The email has an RT ticket number. From Matthew says, I am a designated voter on some of my organizations within a group, but I have not received any invitation to vote. Who to check with? Again, check your junk mail because one of the things we've been doing is that we've been tracking every email that we've sent. We've sent more than 20,000 emails in the last week. There have been zero failures, but a couple of people have reached out to us and said they've not received it. And when we asked them to check, they found it in spam or junk. So check it there. And if you still don't find it there, please um, reach out to us on reach out to us on the email provided, and then we'll sort it out. From Sami Saleh, what should be done if conflicting replies are received from the registered contacts regarding the voter or nominating executive? That's an interesting situation, right? Obviously, that is something that will flag for closer scrutiny. If all the replies are not consistent, saying yes, 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 if just one person says no, then obviously we may have to make calls. We will do whatever we need to do. If you have to call people on Zoom to fix it, that's exactly what we will do. From Mark Elkins, fine, except the email does not say that as in reply unaltered, except yes. So Mark, okay, Mark, it says, thank you for your question. So there's two emails you get. There's one email you get that does not have a RT ticket number. That one simply says, check your inbox for a message from RT. The message that you're supposed to, in fact, that message that I'm speaking of, the very first one, you cannot even reply to it because there's no reply to it. It comes from no reply to AFRINIC. The one to which you should reply, it has explicit instructions at the top, is the one that has a ticket number in it. It literally will tell you, please reply yes or valid or invalid. In fact, 1,009 people have gone through that procedure, replying yes, invalid or invalid over the last week. So I'll be happy to hop on maybe on through email so that we clear that up for you, Mark. The email to which the registered contact should reply is one that has an RT ticket number. And it goes to all the registered contacts pulled from our trusted database. Denson says, are e-signatures accepted? So far, we have not received any e-signature. Okay, we've received one e-signature. But the most important thing is, if the registered contacts look at that e-signature and say they're okay with it, right? We have no major reason to turn it down. But if we send something that is amiss, we will write to the registered contacts and we'll say specifically what is it that makes us uncomfortable and how you can resolve it. Okay? Trust, like I said, the motto of this process is this. We trust you, the registered contacts. Now you tell us whom we can trust. You know your colleagues, your CEOs, and everyone else who works at your company better than we do. So your word in writing is much more important, carries heavier weight than ours. And then, of course, ultimately, the community gets to weigh in at some point. From Yazid, talking on my personal capacity here, would it be possible for AFRINIC to consider publishing and communicating this process in various official languages spoken in French service region? Yes, Yazid. Now, the set of emails that have gone out, the education emails and all the reminders, all of them are in English and French. So these instructions in 4 separate emails and 3 reminders, they are sent in both English and French to all the registered contacts. The form where you go to register a nomination exists in English and French. And for this webinar, we'll see to publishing it in French as well. Um, from Linda, also, okay, back again from Mark. The email that was sent gives no instruction as reply to email. Okay, Mark Elkins, I'll follow up with you immediately after the call by email so we can sort that out. So from Linda, Saf Ezema, can one of the registered contacts who is a serving executive director of the organization nominate another registered contact? Absolutely yes. The nominating executive can nominate themselves. In fact, that's the case for about 15 or more of the companies that have nominated the voter. It has simply been the CEO who happens to be a registered contact saying, hey, I'm nominating myself. But in that case, we still need the other registered contact to say, this is okay, this is not okay. So the executive can nominate themselves or can nominate another registered contact. But in that case, we still need some other person apart from the person who has been nominated or designated to say, this is okay. Because we don't ever want to not be able to answer the question. Dear AFRINIC, of the 7+ people that are registered contacts, on what basis did you choose to give the ballot and the right to vote to this person? That is what we are making sure that we want to be able to answer that question for every single organization that votes. And that is why we have this procedure. From Alindo Vega, where we can find the list of eligible members. If you're eligible, you're already receiving emails that you're eligible, and this is the procedure to designate a voter and then vote. If you're not eligible, you already also received an email telling you that you're not eligible and the reason. There's 2 reasons for which you're not eligible to vote. There's a court order. Unfortunately, we can't do anything about it. That says only organizations that became members after the 18th of September 2023 are eligible to vote. Unfortunately, that affects a certain number of organizations. The other reason you are not eligible to vote is that you have not cleared your bill for 2025. You're not in good standing. In that case, you also received an email saying that is the case, and that if you clear that bill on time, you still have the next 2 weeks or so to designate a voter. From Dylan Else. Hi, Malcolm. So do we just add valid to the end of the subject field? Reply to us, blah, 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 without changing subject line with either subject line in the body of the email, but please just put it in the body of the email. Let's be consistent. Put it in the body of the email so that at least someone doesn't miss the subject line that gets wrapped up. So put in the body of the email. The vast majority of people, here's what we've seen from the 109+ nominations. Some people just read the whole email and they simply reply at the top. All of this, I've gone through all of this, it is valid, right? There's nothing here that is shady. Some people who are much more conscientious, they've literally gone for each of the questions. Do you know the nominating executive? Yes. Do you know is he indeed the CEO or CTO? Does he have the job title that is claimed on the form? Yes. So some people are saying yes for every one of those. So you choose your poison. Victor Dekunle, I received an email via RT asking me to validate the designated voter for my organization. Would a single valid invalid serve as an acceptable response? Yes, but please, when you say valid or invalid, if you say valid, you're saying, I have read the contents of the submission and I am saying valid to everything in it. So yes, you can simply be one valid or invalid at the top of the email. Stephen, please can you help me mark the questions that have already been answered and disappeared? So
Sure. If you see
any other questions?
Yeah, where can we find the list of eligible members?
I've already answered the question. There is no public list of eligible members.
Okay.
You know that you're an eligible member because you've received an email. All of the contacts of the organization have received an email telling you so. So at this moment, there is no reason for you to want to know the list of eligible members. But for the community, once this procedure is complete, the list of designated voters will be online. Any other questions?
Yeah, there is a question about from Mohammed. What about the recent mail of this? We are writing to clarify a recent report which inaccurately claims the discovery of vulnerability in AFRINIC's designated voter nomination platform.
Okay, that is a very important question. Let me answer it by going here. Now, first of all, let's start by saying that if you looked at that email, the intention of the email was malicious and absolutely incorrect. We can tell you for a fact there's been no leak of people's personal data. Unfortunately, that email was from an internal test, which means that for an internal test restricted only to AFRINIC staff, which means that if it got out, it was either leaked or there was a compromise in someone's email address. But please understand, as a result, when we received that notification, the very first thing we did was that we did an audit of all the systems, who logged in into the servers, who had access to what. We've tied down that list, and we know for a fact that no information from the 109 plus organizations who have submitted their documents have leaked. Now, if you look at the link that is mentioned, that is a legitimate link that only the registered contacts ordinarily are supposed to know. Obviously, if you share that with a third party, then it gets out there. We cannot control that. Okay? We cannot control that. But since we went live, there's only one person who acts on a ticket for each organization. So therefore, we are able to track and audit, wherever there is any potential leakage of information. So we can tell you that, look, this procedure is safe. And like someone said, it's possible to guess. That is 312-bit randomly generated number every single time. Practically impossible to guess it from one to the next. And also, the folder into which all of those documents are saved, all of it, it is not possible to browse the contents of that folder, to enumerate the contents of the folder. And of course, when all of this is done within a certain period, consistent with data protection laws, we're going to just delete all of that. So you do not need to worry about that. There is no truth to the fact that the system has been compromised and personal data is being leaked. And because of that, we are remaining extra vigilant to make sure that we know exactly who has access, who's able to see each nomination and the data in the passport and the designation of voter authority form and every time, and who has access to all the systems that are behind running this, even on the RTQs.
Okay, thank you, Mukam, for the clarity. And just to add a bit on that, if you look at the issue, how it was reported on the AFNOT mailing list, you understand that this is indeed intention to sabotage the election process. And if you look at the way the so-called vulnerability was described, someone will want to like describe how you can reproduce this vulnerability. So we read something, there is nothing in that message telling you how this person came across these links. How do you get to those links? Nothing in that message said it. So you understand that this link were shared by someone with bad intentions and then exposed out there to discredit the ongoing process. So far, we've been waiting because we replied to that threat, and also we sent communication out on the various AFRINIC channels and to all our members, informing them that this was not a vulnerability in the platform itself. It's just someone with very, very bad intentions. And we've been waiting for the the so-called poll something to, come up and, tell us more about how to go about reproducing this vulnerability. And so far, we're still waiting. And also, what we did internally also is that an ongoing investigation. An investigation is ongoing, and when we put our hands on who did this, appropriate legal actions are going to happen.
Okay, so we commit to be totally transparent. If something goes wrong, we will be the first ones to let you know. Especially in the absence of a CEO, we understand that there's a huge burden on us, and we are committed to not betraying that trust. If something goes wrong, we would guarantee you we would be very forthright and communicate with it openly and ask for help from our members and the rest of the community. So far, that's not been the case.
Yeah,
So
so
please,
exactly.
so we want to thank those 39 plus additional members who registered yesterday, despite seeing that message, because fortunately we got a lot of messages even from the community who looked through that 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 um that disclosure, and they simply realized that it was smoke. It was impossible to guess, you know, it was impossible to reproduce as stated in the email. So please continue to submit your nominations and let us raise this number. Hopefully, we all get to 1,740, right? Because otherwise, we are going to have to, we want to avoid this. We want to avoid this. This is something that cannot happen again. Okay, I've got a question here from Bello Usman Jada. Can a senior director sign an authorization on behalf of the CEO for the DV, especially in government organizations? If your first guide is what is the delegation of authority procedure like in your company? So long as directors can sign and say, I have the right to delegate this, it's fine for us. Then from Frank Kwabena Boache, one Morgan is asking that his MD nominated him yesterday via email. He wants to know how long it will take to get an email of eligibility. So Morgan, when your MD, I think there's a mix up here. When your MD nominates you, it is that designation of voter authority. That is how your MD nominates you. The MD's name, your name, the template is online. You are the one who will take that document and go to the website and fill the form yourself, not your MD. Okay? So if that is what happened, then you just need to wait a few hours and then you get the. Of course, you already have if you filled it, you already have everything that you filled in. The most important part is your other colleagues that are registered contacts, they get the email within a few hours. So the person that fills the form, the online form, is the designated voter, not the executive. So the executive's job is to, yes, I'm confirming that I indeed granted this person the authority to vote. And also the other registered contacts, their job is to, yes, I know this person who is claiming to be an executive. That's his name. That is indeed his job role. We also know this person who has been designated as a designated voter. That's his name, that's his email address, nothing here. Because please remember, if the executive and the designated voters are not registered contacts, the only way they even know about all of this information is that they got it from a designated voter. Because there's other information that, of course, if you're being malicious, you could go, fish for it online. But it's information that the registered contacts would know. So the web of trust is we trust you, the registered contacts. Now you registered contacts, tell us if you can trust the nominating executive and if you can trust the 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 delegated the designated voter. No, no. If it happens that the designated voter is one of you, we also still need you to confirm, right? We need you to confirm that indeed this is the one person, so that tomorrow no one can come and say, but AFRINIC, this is not who we asked to vote on our behalf. Remember, the reason we are having this process in the first place is because it is not AFRINIC's job to choose whom of the 5+ contacts for each organization should be the ones to cast the ballot. That's the purpose of this process. It's up to you. Um, any other questions? I'm seeing not the question, I'm seeing something in the chat. Where can I find the designation of voter template? If you're a registered contact, it's important that you check for a series of emails that you would have received. They all start with election in square brackets. But if you go to the website elections.afrinic.net, the third menu on your right, you find a link called the Designation of Voter Authority. You find the templates there in Microsoft Word format, in PDF, and in Google Doc format. And my colleague Wayne, my brilliant colleague Wayne, has just sent you the link, so in the chat, so you can click on that link and you go there directly. All right. So Wayne, can you give everyone? Stephen, we are already at the top of the hour. If there are no
Yeah.
more questions, I will hand it over to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mukom. I can see we have tackled all the questions. Hi Mukom. Towns, are you looking at the date? Okay, I think this was responded, right? Okay. So yeah,
That is from Solstein. So are you looking at the date that the registered contacts were created? Um, we aren't, because remember, we don't create the registered contacts. If a registered contact was created, it must have been created by someone that we vouched for before. Remember, before you become an admin contact, there's a whole procedure that where we vouch you. And of course, AFRINIC staff on their own are never going to just update your contacts. So we don't look at those dates. Is there some concern, Saul? Is there some concern that we might be missing? Because we'd love to hear, please. We might have thought about a lot of things, but if there is some concern about something that we might be missing, if we don't look at the dates, fine.
okay. So thank you very much for all our members who took their time to attend to this webinar. Thank you, Mukom, for your time. Thanks, Wayne, and all the other staff that have supported in the chat section. I can see Madvi, I can see Susan. Thank you very much for your time, and um, stay tuned. We are going to continue communicating with you. Our aim is that we get a maximum number of participants. This is why we'll reach out to you with a lot of communications to, first of all, present to you the process, educate you on how to vote, and bring more people to vote. So we'll be getting back to you with the next webinar. We will send you'll receive communications about that, and we'll also continue to send you emails and video contents so that you know exactly how to register your voters and cast your ballot. Thank you very much, and see you. Bye bye. Wait. So yeah.
Make that green, please. Make that green.
Yeah, the green is
Green the
going.
wheel, green the wheel,
We
green
need,
the
we
wheel,
need
please.
We need more green. Let's make more green. 475 so far is commendable, but 1635 is left. Let's get them here. If you have your friends, other members, other colleagues, please share the communication with them. Let's get more of them. I'm hoping that in the course, by the end of this week, we will have gone halfway of this chart so that next week we are getting our last print. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye.